The stars had always been kind to Captain Han Wu. For 15 years, he had sailed through the black ocean of space, discovering new worlds and meeting strange beings. He had seen wonders that most humans could only dream about. But today, the stars felt cold and distant. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, hung motionless in the void. Around it, like wolves surrounding a wounded deer, floated 12 warships of the Galactic Tribunal. Each one was 10 times larger than his vessel. Their weapons were aimed directly at his bridge. "Captain," said Lieutenant, his young face pale with fear, "they are hailing us again." Wu stood from his chair. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared. It belonged to Grand Arbiter, the leader of the Galactic Tribunal. His skin was the color of old bone, stretched tight over a skull that seemed too large for his thin neck. His eyes were like two black holes, pulling in all light and giving nothing back. "Human vessel," said. His voice was cold like wind through an empty cave. "You will follow our ships to the Citadel of Judgment. You will not resist. You will not flee. Any attempt to do so will result in your immediate destruction." Wu kept his face calm, though his heart beat fast. "May I ask why we are being detained? We have broken no laws." "You will learn the charges when we arrive." The screen went dark. Turned to him. "Sir, what do we do?" Wu looked at his crew. There were 47 souls aboard his ship. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, and dreamers. They had left Earth seeking knowledge and adventure. Now they faced something none of them understood. "We go with them," he said quietly. "We have no choice." The journey to the Citadel took 3 days. During that time, Wu tried to contact Earth, but all communications were blocked. He tried to gather information from the guards who watched their every move, but they said nothing. The crew grew more afraid with each passing hour. On the second night, Doctor came to his quarters. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had spent her life studying the ruins of dead civilizations across the galaxy. In her arms, she carried something wrapped in cloth. "Captain," she said, closing the door behind her, "I need to show you something." She unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a sphere the size of a human fist. It was black like midnight and strange symbols covered its surface. As Wu looked at it, he felt something strange. It was like the sphere was looking back at him. "What is this?" he asked. "I found it on 442b in the ruins of a civilization that died 50,000 years ago. I have never seen anything like it. No scanner can read it. No tool can scratch it. And Captain," she paused, her voice dropping to a whisper, "it speaks to me." Wu raised an eyebrow. "Speaks?" "Not with words, but sometimes when I hold it I feel something, like someone is trying to tell me something important." She looked down at the sphere. "I think it is alive in some way we do not understand." Before Wu could respond, the ship shook. They had arrived. The Citadel of Judgment was the largest structure Wu had ever seen. It was a station built in the heart of the galaxy, where 1,000 different species came to settle their disputes. It was shaped like a great wheel, spinning slowly around a central core that glowed with blue fire. Ships from 100 worlds docked at its edges like insects on a giant flower. The humans were escorted off their vessel by armed guards. They walked through corridors made of white stone, past alien faces that watched them with curiosity and suspicion. Finally, they reached a great hall where Ambassador waited for them. Was Earth's voice among the stars. She was a dignified woman in her 60s, with silver hair and a spine of steel. When she saw Wu, her face was grave. "Captain Han," she said, "I am glad you are safe, but I fear what comes next." "What are the charges?" Wu asked. Took a deep breath. "They accuse us of genocide. They say that humans destroyed an entire species called the 40,000 years ago." Wu stared at her. "That is impossible. 40,000 years ago, our ancestors were painting on cave walls. We did not even have writing." I know, said, but they have evidence, or so they claim. The trial begins tomorrow if we are found guilty. She did not finish, she did not need to. Stepped forward, what is the punishment? His eyes were filled with sorrow. Death, not just for us, for Earth, for every human colony in the galaxy. They will burn us all. The room fell silent. Wu felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. 8 billion lives on Earth, 3 billion more scattered across the colonies, all of them men, women, and children, waiting for a judgment they knew nothing about. That night, Wu could not sleep. He stood at a window, looking out at the endless stars. How many of those lights were home to beings who wanted his people dead? How many had already decided that humans were guilty? Doctor found him there, still holding her strange sphere. Captain, she said softly, I felt it again. The sphere. It is getting stronger. It is like it knows something is about to happen. Wu looked at the object in her hands. In the dim light, he could see the symbols on its surface move, just slightly, like living things. Keep it safe, he said. I do not know what it is, but I have a feeling we are going to need every advantage we can get. Nodded and held the sphere close to her chest. For a moment, it glowed with a faint light, and both of them felt a warmth spread through the cold room. Then the light faded, and the sphere was still once more. Tomorrow they would face their accusers. Tomorrow they would fight for the right to exist. But tonight, in the darkness between stars, a small group of humans held on to hope. They did not know that their fate, and the fate of their entire species, rested in the hands of something far older than any of them could imagine. Something that had been waiting, patient and silent, for this very moment. The sphere pulsed once more in the darkness. And somewhere in the void, the watcher began to wake. The Hall of Echoes was built to find truth. Its walls were made of a special crystal that could sense lies. When someone spoke falsely, the crystals would hum with an angry red light. When truth was spoken, they glowed soft blue. For 10,000 years, this hall had witnessed the greatest trials in galactic history. Today, it would witness the trial of humanity. Captain Han Wu sat with his delegation in the center of the hall. Around them, rising like mountains, were seats filled with thousands of alien beings. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had bodies made of light itself. All of them looked down at the small group of humans with eyes full of judgment. Grand Arbiter sat on a high throne at the front of the hall. His skeletal face showed no emotion as he raised one thin hand. The crowd fell silent. We are gathered here to examine the crimes of the species known as humanity, he said. His voice echoed through the great space. The prosecution may present its case. From the shadows stepped Counselor. She was a species with blue skin and 4 arms. Her people were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors and cunning politicians. When she looked at the humans, her yellow eyes burned with hatred. Thank you, Grand Arbiter, she said. She pressed a device in her hand, and suddenly the center of the hall filled with light. Images appeared in the air, floating like ghosts. Wu watched as strange shapes formed. He saw a beautiful world with purple seas and golden forests. He saw cities that touched the clouds, filled with tall, graceful beings with long necks and kind faces. This was said. They were a peaceful people. They loved art and music. They explored the stars not to conquer but to learn. For 3 million years they were a light in the darkness of space. The image changed. Now the beautiful world was burning. The cities fell. The purple seas turned black with ash. They ran through their streets screaming, dying, while shadows fell upon them from above. 40,000 years ago they disappeared, continued. Every world they lived on was destroyed. Every library was burned. Every child was killed. For centuries we did not know who was responsible. She paused, letting the horror of the images sink in. Then she smiled, a cold and terrible smile. Now we know. The image changed again. This time Wu felt his blood turn to ice. He was looking at creatures that walked on 2 legs. They had 2 arms, 2 eyes, and faces that looked almost human. Almost, but not quite. They were larger, stronger, with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water, but the shape was unmistakable. "These are the beings that destroyed the," said. "We found these recordings in an outpost that survived the attack. We have analyzed their genetic markers. They match the species called Homo with 97.8% accuracy." The hall exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in anger and fear. Some called for the humans to be killed immediately. Others demanded more evidence. The crystals on the walls flickered between red and blue, confused by the storm of emotions. Ambassador rose to her feet. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "This is lies," she declared. 40,000 years ago, humans had not even invented the wheel. We could not travel to other stars. We could not destroy a civilization. This evidence is false. Laughed. "The genetic evidence does not lie, Ambassador. Perhaps your ancestors were more advanced than your history tells. Perhaps they came to the stars, committed their genocide, and returned to your primitive world to hide their shame. Perhaps the violence in your nature is older than you know." "That is speculation, not proof," said firmly. "Then explain this," replied. She pressed her device again and a new image appeared. It was a piece of metal, twisted and burned, but with human writing on its surface. "This was found in the ruins of a colony. It carries symbols from an Earth language called English." Wu stared at the artifact. The writing was strange, old, but he could read some of it. It said, "For the glory of Earth." He turned to Lieutenant, who sat beside him. "This cannot be real," he whispered. "Someone has made this. Someone is framing us." Nodded slowly. His young face was tight with thought. "Captain, I have been reading about the. Before the died, they were at war with each other. The and the hated each other for centuries. When the disappeared, the took all their territory." Wu's eyes widened. "You think the did this, they destroyed the and blamed us." "I think it is possible, but I have no proof." The trial continued for hours. Brought witness after witness, each one adding to the case against humanity. Scientists who had studied the genetic evidence. Historians who pointed to the violent nature of human history. Even philosophers who argued that a species capable of so much internal war could easily commit genocide against others. Ambassador fought back with everything she had. She spoke of human kindness, of art and love and sacrifice. She reminded the tribunal of all the good humans had done since joining the galactic community. She begged them to consider that the evidence might be false, that someone might be using this trial to destroy an innocent species. But the crowd had already made up their minds. Every time spoke, Wu could see the aliens looking at her with cold eyes. To them, she was already guilty. To them, all humans were guilty. As the first day ended, Wu returned to his quarters exhausted. He found Doctor waiting for him, the black sphere in her hands. It was glowing now, not just a little but brightly like a small star. "It is getting stronger," said. Her voice trembled with wonder and fear. "Captain, I heard it speak today. Not just feelings but words, it said. It said truth will come." "What does that mean?" Wu took the sphere from her hands. It was warm like living flesh. He could feel something moving inside it, something ancient and vast. When he touched it, he felt a sense of calm, as if someone was telling him that everything would be all right. "I do not know what this is," he said, "but I believe it is on our side." Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, cold and uncaring. But in that small room, holding an object older than their civilization, 2 humans found something they desperately needed. Hope. And in the darkness of the sphere, the Watcher continued to gather its strength. The time of silence was ending. Soon it would speak. Soon the truth would be heard. But first, humanity would have to face its darkest hour. The third day of the trial began with rain. Not real rain, of course. The Citadel was a station in space. but someone had programmed the ceiling of the Hall of Echoes to show dark clouds and falling water. Wu thought it was fitting. It felt like the entire galaxy was crying. Ambassador had not slept in 2 days. Her silver hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, but her eyes still burned with fire as she stood to make her final argument. "Members of the tribunal," she began, "you have heard the prosecution's case. You have seen their evidence. Now I ask you to look beyond it. I ask you to see what they have not shown you." She pressed her own device and new images filled the air. Pictures of human children playing in gardens, doctors healing the sick, artists creating beauty from nothing, soldiers laying down their weapons to help those in need. "This is who we are," said. "We are not perfect. We have made mistakes. We have wars in our history, yes, but we also have love. We have mercy. We have the ability to change, to grow, to become better than we were." She turned to face Grand Arbiter directly. 40,000 years ago, our ancestors were living in caves. They had no ships, no weapons, no way to travel between stars. The idea that they could destroy an advanced civilization like thee is not just unlikely. It is impossible. Counselor rose to respond. Her forearms spread wide, like a predator ready to strike. "The human speaks of impossibility," she said, "but the evidence speaks of truth. Genetic markers do not lie. Physical artifacts do not lie. Perhaps humans were seeded on their world by space-traveling ancestors. Perhaps they developed technology, committed their crimes, and then fell back into darkness. We do not know how they did it. We only know that they did." She pointed at the humans with one blue finger. "Look at them. Look at how they have spread across the galaxy in just 300 years. Like a disease, they multiply, they consume, they destroy. Is it so hard to believe that their ancestors did the same thing?" The crowd murmured in agreement. Wu could feel the hatred pressing against him like a physical weight. Grand Arbiter raised his hand for silence. The old alien looked tired, as if the weight of this decision was crushing him. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "The tribunal will now vote. All who believe the humans are guilty of the genocide of the, show your agreement." Wu watched as lights appeared above the delegates, red for guilty, blue for innocent. One by one the lights flickered on. Red, red, red. Occasionally a blue light would appear, but it was quickly drowned in a sea of crimson. When the last vote was cast, the hall fell silent. Red lights filled the space like drops of blood. Grand Arbiter stood. His face was carved from stone. "The tribunal has reached its verdict. By a vote of 847 to 23, the species known as humanity is found guilty of the genocide of the—" The words hit Wu like a physical blow. He heard Lieutenant gasp beside him. Doctor clutched her sphere so tightly her knuckles turned white. Ambassador closed her eyes, and a single tear ran down her cheek. "The sentence," continued, "is death, not just for those present but for the entire species. All human worlds will be cleansed. All human colonies will be purged. This sentence will be carried out in 100 hours." The crowd erupted in cheers. Aliens who had watched the trial with cold eyes now celebrated the destruction of an entire species. Some laughed, some sang, some simply smiled with satisfaction. Counselor looked at the humans with triumph in her yellow eyes. "Justice is served," she said. But Wu was not ready to give up. He remembered an old story his grandmother had told him about a law as ancient as the stars themselves. He pushed through his despair and raised his voice. "I invoke the right of final witness." The hall went silent. Even the celebrating aliens stopped to stare. Grand Arbiter frowned, his black eyes narrowing. "The right of final witness," Wu repeated. "It is written in the founding laws of the tribunal. The condemned may present one final piece of evidence before sentence is carried out. This right cannot be." Did not move for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "The human is correct. The law is absolute. You may present your witness." Stepped forward in anger. This is a delay tactic. They have nothing. The law is the law, said firmly, even for those we despise. He turned to Wu. You have 1 hour to prepare your witness. Make it count, human. It will be your last act before your species is erased from existence. The humans were escorted to a small chamber. As soon as the door closed, turned to Wu with desperate eyes. Captain, what witness? We have nothing. Wu did not answer. Instead, he looked at Doctor. She was holding her sphere, and it was glowing brighter than ever before. Light leaked through her fingers like water through a broken dam. He said softly, "What is it saying now?" His eyes were distant, as if she was listening to something far away. "It is saying, bring me to the light, show them all." Show them what? She looked at him, and for the first time she smiled. The truth. It wants to show them the truth. Wu took a deep breath. They had no other choice. Their fate, the fate of every human being in existence, rested on this strange object and the hope that it held something that could save them. Then that is what we will do, he said. We will bring it before the tribunal. We will let it speak. Ambassador shook her head. Wu, we do not know what that thing is. It could be dangerous. It could make things worse. How can things be worse? Asked. We are already sentenced to death. Had no answer to that. 1 hour later, the humans returned to the Hall of Echoes. The crowd watched them with cold amusement, like people watching insects struggle against the inevitable. Grand Arbiter looked down from his throne. Present your witness, human, and then we will end this. Wu stepped aside. Doctor walked forward, the sphere cradled in her hands. It was shining so brightly now that some of the aliens had to cover their eyes. This is our witness, Wu said. We found it in the ruins of a civilization older than the. We do not know what it is, but it told us it has something to say. Laughed, a rock. Your final witness is a rock. This is pathetic. But did not laugh. He was staring at the sphere with something in his eyes that might have been fear. I know that object, he whispered. It is from the time before, from the architects. The hall fell silent, even stopped laughing. Doctor raised the sphere above her head. Speak, she said. Please, show them what you showed me. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere exploded with light. Every screen in the hall went dark. Every device stopped working. The crystals on the walls, which had glowed throughout the trial, suddenly blazed with pure white fire. And then a voice spoke. It was not loud, but it filled every corner of the hall. It was ancient and vast and impossible to ignore. I am the Watcher. I have seen all. I have recorded all, and I have come to speak the truth. The trial of humanity was about to change forever. The light from the sphere filled the Hall of Echoes like water filling a cup. It was everywhere at once, bright but not painful, warm but not hot. The thousands of aliens in the gallery sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, as the ancient voice echoed through the chamber. I am the Watcher. I was created by the architects, the first beings to walk among the stars. They lived when your galaxies were young, when your worlds were still balls of fire and dust. They seeded life across the universe. They watched their children grow. And when they finally passed into the great silence, they left guardians behind to record what came after. The light began to form shapes. First, there were stars being born. Then planets cooling and life crawling from oceans. Then civilizations rising and falling, over and over, across millions of years. The delegates watched in awe as the entire history of the galaxy played before their eyes. I have watched for billions of years, the Watcher continued. I have seen empires built and destroyed. I have seen love and hatred, creation and destruction, truth and lies, and I have recorded everything. The shapes changed again. Now they showed the tall and graceful people who had been destroyed 40,000 years ago. They were building their beautiful cities, exploring distant worlds, creating art that made even the hardest hearts weep. They were indeed a great people, the Watcher said. They were kind and curious. They sought knowledge, not power. For 3 million years they were a light in the darkness. Counselor found her voice. Then show us how the humans destroyed them. Show us their guilt. The Watcher did not respond to her directly. Instead, the images shifted again. Now they showed something different. A group of, but these ones looked wrong. Their faces were twisted with anger. Their eyes burned with fanaticism. They wore different clothes from the others, dark robes covered in strange symbols. Not all were as pure as their history suggests, the Watcher said. Near the end of their civilization, a faction arose. They called themselves the Pure Flame. They believed that only the deserved to exist. All other life, they said, was pollution, corruption, a disease that needed to be cleansed. The gallery was silent, even had stopped speaking. The Pure Flame began to study the lesser species of the galaxy. They watched primitive worlds where life was just beginning to grow. And on one small blue planet, in an arm of the galaxy far from space, they found something that terrified them. The images showed Earth as it was 40,000 years ago. Green forests, blue oceans, and scattered across the continents, small tribes of humans. They were primitive, wearing animal skins, living in caves, hunting with simple weapons. But the Watcher showed something else as well. The humans were sitting together around fires, telling stories, caring for their sick and elderly, painting pictures on cave walls, looking up at the stars with wonder in their eyes. These humans, the Watcher said, possessed something they had never seen before, a spark of potential that burned brighter than any the architects had ever created. The Pure Flame saw this potential and knew that one day these creatures would rise to rival themselves. They decided that day could never come. Now the images grew dark. The Pure Flame in their black robes standing before great machines. They were building something. An army. Creatures made of flesh and metal, shaped to look like the primitive humans they had observed. They created these bioconstructs, the Watcher explained. Weapons designed to look like humans. They sent them across space with one purpose, to destroy everything. They would kill their own people and leave evidence that pointed to the humans. When the galaxy discovered the genocide, they would hunt down the real humans and wipe them out before they could ever become a threat. Wu felt his heart pounding in his chest. The truth was worse than he could have imagined. An ancient civilization had tried to destroy humanity before it was even born. But the Pure Flame made a mistake, the Watcher continued. Their madness consumed them. In their desire to destroy all life that was not, they turned on their own people as well. They could not separate the pure from the impure, so they destroyed everyone. The bioconstructs they created were too effective. They burned everything. In the end, the Pure Flame destroyed itself along with all the images showed the final days of the civilization. Cities burning, ships crashing. The beautiful people with the long necks running and screaming as the humanoid monsters hunted them down. And in the shadows, the members of the Pure Flame, laughing as their own world burned around them. They were not murdered by humans, the Watcher said firmly. They were murdered by their own hatred, by their own fear of something they did not understand. The humans were innocent. They were always innocent. Grand Arbiter rose from his throne. His skeletal face was pale with shock. But the evidence, the genetic markers, the artifacts. The genetic markers were designed to match human DNA, the Watcher replied. The artifacts were planted by the Pure Flame. They intended for this trial to happen. They intended for the galaxy to finish what they started, and someone helped them. The light of the sphere turned toward Counselor. She stepped back, fear replacing the arrogance on her blue face. The found records of the Pure Flame's plan 300 years ago. They knew the truth. They knew the humans were innocent. But they also knew that if humans were allowed to grow strong, they would challenge power. So they buried the truth. They kept the evidence hidden. And when humans finally reached the stars, they made sure the old lies would be believed. His forearms trembled. That is not true. We found nothing. We knew nothing. The Watcher showed more images. scientists examining ancient records in secret laboratories, leaders discussing how to use the false evidence against humanity, messages sent between agents, plotting to ensure the trial would end with humanity's destruction. These records were taken from systems, the Watcher said. They are authentic. They cannot be. They did not commit the original crime, but they tried to use it to commit a new one. They tried to use lies to destroy an innocent species. The gallery exploded with noise. Aliens shouted at the delegates. Some called for their arrest. Others demanded that the trial be stopped. The crystals on the walls blazed pure blue, confirming that everything the Watcher said was true. Tried to run, but guards blocked her path. She fell to her knees, her yellow eyes wild with panic. "It was necessary," she screamed. "The humans are dangerous. You see how fast they spread, how quickly they grow. In 1,000 years they will rule this galaxy. We had to stop them." Ambassador walked toward her fallen enemy. Her face was calm, but her voice was cold. "You tried to murder 11 billion people because you were afraid of what we might become. That is not justice. That is not protection. That is the same madness that destroyed the—" Grand Arbiter slammed his hand against his throne. The hall fell silent. "This trial is suspended," he declared. His voice shook with emotion. "The evidence against humanity is proven false. The verdict of guilty is overturned. The sentence of death is cancelled." Doctor held the sphere close to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Lieutenant grabbed Wu's arm, unable to speak. The small group of humans stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by the entire galaxy, and for the first time in days they could breathe. They were not going to die. Their people were safe. But the Watcher was not finished. Its ancient voice filled the hall once more. "There is more. The truth has been spoken, but now there must be recognition. The architects created me to do more than record. They created me to identify those who are worthy of their legacy." The light gathered around Doctor. She gasped as warmth spread through her body. "This one," the Watcher said, "carried me not for power, not for wealth, but for truth. She sought answers that the galaxy deserved to know. She is worthy." And with those words, everything changed. The light that surrounded Doctor grew brighter and brighter. She tried to move, but her body would not obey. The sphere in her hands was no longer a separate object. It was melting, flowing, becoming one with her skin. She could feel it moving through her veins like liquid fire, not painful, but strange beyond words. "What is happening?" she whispered. "The architects left guardians across the galaxy," the Watcher's voice explained. "But they also left gifts, tools, knowledge, power that was meant to be given to those who proved themselves worthy. For 10 million years, species have found our relics. Most sought to use them as weapons. Most tried to take what was not theirs. They were rejected. But you, child of Earth, you are different." The light began to fade. When looked at her hands, she saw faint lines glowing beneath her skin, like veins of gold. She felt something new in her mind, a presence, vast and ancient but kind. "The sphere has bonded with you," the Watcher said. "You now carry a piece of the architects within you, their memories, their knowledge, access to secrets that have been hidden since before your species existed. But this is not a gift without cost. With knowledge comes responsibility. With power comes duty." Grand Arbiter stepped down from his throne and walked toward the humans. His movements were slow, and for the first time he looked not like a judge, but like a very old man who had just learned that everything he believed was wrong. "In all my centuries serving the tribunal," he said, "I have never seen anything like this. The architects are legend, myth. We did not know their relics still existed. We did not know they could do this." Captain Wu stood beside, protective and worried. "Is she all right? What have you done to her?" "She is more than all right," the Watcher replied. "She has been chosen, and through her so has your species." The ancient presence seemed to gather itself, and when it spoke again, its voice echoed through every speaker on the station. broadcast to every ship, every world, every corner of the galaxy. Let it be known across all systems, all species, all time. Humanity is declared innocent of the crimes charged against them. Their accusers have been exposed. Their enemies have been revealed. But more than this, humanity has shown something rare and precious. They have shown the same spark that the architects saw in them 40,000 years ago. The spark of truth, the spark of justice, the spark of hope. The hall was completely silent. Thousands of aliens watched and listened as an entity older than their civilizations pronounced judgment on the small, young species called humanity. Therefore, by the authority invested in me by the architects themselves, I declare humanity bearer of justice, the first species in 10 million years to be deemed worthy of this title. Lieutenant leaned close to Wu. What does that mean, bearer of justice? Before Wu could answer, the Watcher continued. As bearers of justice, humans carry a sacred duty. There are other relics scattered across the galaxy, other truths buried, other species wrongly accused or forgotten, other lies waiting to be exposed. The bearers will seek these truths. They will speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. They will stand against those who would use deception and hatred to destroy the innocent. Doctor closed her eyes and felt the knowledge flowing into her mind. Star maps showing the locations of other architect sites, history that had been lost for millions of years, the faces of civilizations that had been erased from memory by enemies who feared them. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. I can see them, she whispered. So many secrets, so many stories, so many truths waiting to be found. The Watcher's light began to fade. Its time in the physical world was ending. I have done what I was created to do, it said. I have waited for billions of years for this moment. Now my task is complete. The truth has been spoken. The worthy have been recognized. The rest is up to you. The sphere reformed its hands, but it was changed now. It was smaller, darker, and she could feel it humming gently against her palms, like a heartbeat. Wait, she said, will I see you again? I am part of you now, the Watcher replied. When you need guidance, you will find it within yourself. When you seek truth, I will help you find it. But the choices you make, the paths you walk, those must be your own. The light faded completely. The Hall of Echoes was quiet, and then, slowly, the aliens began to move. Grand Arbiter walked to Ambassador, and did something no Grand Arbiter had ever done in the history of the Tribunal. He bowed. On behalf of the Tribunal, I apologize, he said, his voice cracked with emotion. We almost committed a terrible crime. We almost destroyed an innocent species because we believed lies. We were blind, and our blindness nearly led to genocide. Took his hands in hers. We do not ask for apologies. We ask only for a chance to prove that we are worthy of the trust the Watcher has placed in us, a chance to show the galaxy who we really are. Around the hall, other aliens began to approach the humans. Some looked at them with new eyes, curious and hopeful. Others still seemed suspicious, unable to let go of their old fears so quickly, but none of them called for human blood anymore. Counselor was led away in chains, screaming about the danger humans posed, about how the galaxy would regret this day. No one listened. The crystals on the walls glowed pure blue the entire time, confirming her guilt, her lies, her conspiracy. As the delegation prepared to return to their ship, a young alien approached Captain Wu. It was a small creature with big eyes and soft fur, barely reaching Wu's waist. It belonged to a species called the, known throughout the galaxy for their gentle nature. Excuse me, the young said. Is it true? Are humans really the bearers of justice? Wu knelt down to meet its eyes. That is what the Watcher said. Does that mean you will help people who are in trouble, people who have been hurt by lies? Wu looked at his crew, at Ambassador who had fought so hard for their survival, at Lieutenant who had suspected the truth when everyone else had given up, at Doctor who now carried something ancient and powerful within her. "Yes," he said, "that is exactly what we will do." The young smiled and ran back to its family. Wu watched it go and felt something warm in his chest. Pride, hope, purpose. The horizon's edge departed the citadel of judgment 3 days later. As it flew past the great station, past the fleets that had once threatened to destroy them, past the countless stars that made up the heart of the galaxy, Captain Wu stood on the bridge and looked out at the void. "Where do we go now?" Lieutenant asked. Wu turned to Doctor. She was holding the sphere, her eyes distant as she communed with whatever remained of the Watcher inside her. "There is a system 300 light-years from here," she said. "The Watcher's memories show me a relic hidden there, and something else. A species that was accused of a crime they did not commit, just like us. They were wiped out 2,000 years ago, but their accusers are still alive, still benefiting from their lies." "Then that is where we go," Wu said. "We find the truth. We speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. We make sure what almost happened to us never happens to anyone else." Ambassador joined them at the viewport. "Bearer of justice," she said quietly. "It is a heavy title." "It is," Wu agreed. "But we did not choose it, it chose us, and I think we are ready to carry it." The ship jumped to hyperspace, its lights disappearing into the infinite darkness. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of stars and civilizations. But something had changed. A new force had entered the game. A small species from a small planet had been given a great responsibility. And they would not let the galaxy down. Doctor smiled as she felt the sphere pulse in her hands. The Watcher had said there were many truths waiting to be found, many stories waiting to be told, many innocent souls waiting for someone to fight for them. The humans were ready. The journey had just begun.